No assistant ever lasted a week working for the Paralyzed Millionaire. 43 people tried. 43 people broke. The ballroom is silent except for the sound of a microphone stand creaking under the weight of a man's grip. 300 people in evening gowns and black-tie tuxedos sit frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips, eyes locked on the wheelchair at center stage. The man gripping that microphone. Adrian Castellane, venture capital titan, $400 million to his name. Looks like he's about to shatter. His knuckles are white. His voice shakes when he speaks. "I need you all to know," he says, "that everything good about this moment belongs to him." He points. The camera finds a man standing at the edge of the stage. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark brown skin catching the light from the chandeliers overhead. Mid-40s, wearing a simple black suit that looks borrowed, hands clasped in front of him like he's trying to disappear. His face is unreadable. Calm. Almost stone. Someone in the third row, a man in a military dress uniform, stands abruptly. His chair scrapes against marble. He's staring at the man on the edge of the stage like he's seen a ghost. "Marcus Alejo Webb," the officer says, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "The Walter Reed legend." The name detonates. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Phones come out. Someone whispers to their table mate. Another person pulls up a Google search, and their face goes pale. Within 30 seconds, half the ballroom knows exactly who that quiet man in the borrowed suit is. And Adrian Castellane, the man who just publicly pointed at him, realizes he had no idea. His face drains of color. Because for 5 months, Adrian treated that man like garbage, mocked him, degraded him, tried to break him the same way he broke 43 others. And the whole time, he had no idea who he was actually dealing with. The whole time, the man who could barely afford rent was someone Adrian could never afford to hire. If you believe that the people we underestimate are often the ones who save us, stay with this story. Because what happens next will prove that dignity, not power, is the only currency that matters when everything is on the line. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever worked for someone who made you feel invisible? But to understand how a humble caregiver became the man at the center of that ballroom, the man a millionaire publicly confessed to abusing, we need to go back 5 months, to the day Marcus Webb walked through the gates of the Castellane estate for the first time. The first morning started at 6. Marcus stood in the doorway of Adrian's bedroom, waiting to be acknowledged. The room smelled like expensive cologne and stale air. Heavy curtains blocked most of the light. Adrian was already awake, sitting up in bed, his wheelchair positioned within reach. "Coffee," Adrian said without looking at him. Marcus nodded and headed for the kitchen. He returned 8 minutes later with a mug, black, no sugar. Adrian took one sip and set it down hard on the nightstand. "Did I say black?" Marcus kept his voice level. "You didn't specify? So you just assumed?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "You didn't think to ask what kind I wanted, or is that too complicated?" Marcus said nothing. "Make it again. 2 sugars. Cream. And this time, try thinking." Marcus took the mug and walked back to the kitchen. His hands didn't shake. His jaw didn't tighten. He made the coffee exactly as requested and brought it back. Adrian tasted it, shrugged, and waved him away. 2 hours later, Adrian needed help transferring from the bed to the wheelchair. Marcus positioned himself correctly, gripped under Adrian's arms, and lifted with his legs. Adrian's weight shifted smoothly. The transfer took 12 seconds. "I figured someone like you would be good with physical labor," Adrian said as Marcus adjusted the footrests. Marcus's hands stilled for half a second. Then he finished the adjustment and stepped back. "That's all," Adrian said. Marcus left the room. He walked down the hallway, past the oil paintings and marble busts, and found the small bathroom the staff used. He stood at the sink and looked at his reflection. Dark brown skin, graying hair, tired eyes. He washed his hands and went back to work. Day 2 started the same way. Coffee. Transfer. Medications laid out in the small plastic organizer Mrs. Chen had shown him. Around noon, Adrian called him into the office. "I need the Berkshire file. Top drawer of the filing cabinet. Bring it to me." Marcus found the cabinet, opened the top drawer, and located a manila folder labeled Berkshire Holdings. He brought it to Adrian's desk. Adrian flipped it open, scanned the first page, then looked up. This is the wrong file, Marcus blinked. You said Berkshire, top drawer. I said the Berkshire contract. This is the holding summary. Adrian's voice rose. Do you not understand basic instructions? Marcus glanced at the folder. The label clearly said Berkshire Holdings. There was no other Berkshire file in that drawer. 2 cleaning staff members were in the hallway. They'd stopped working. They were listening. I apologize, Marcus said quietly. What do you need? Adrian stared at him for a long moment, then waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. Just put it back. Marcus returned the file to the drawer and walked past the cleaning staff without making eye contact. One of them, a woman in her 50s, gave him a look that might have been sympathy. Day 3 brought a new test. Adrian needed help in the bathroom. Marcus had done this kind of work before, in other jobs, with other people. It required steadiness and detachment. You focused on the task. You didn't think about dignity or discomfort. You just did what needed to be done. He helped Adrian transfer to the shower chair, adjusted the water temperature, handed him the soap. Adrian didn't take it. You'll need to do it, he said flatly. Marcus set the soap down and began. He kept his movements efficient, clinical. Adrian talked the entire time. You know what I've learned? Adrian said, staring at the tile wall. Some people are meant to lead. Some people are meant to follow. Some people are meant to follow. Some people are meant to follow. Some people are meant to serve. It's just the way the world works. No shame in it. You just have to know your place. He finished washing Adrian's back, rinsed the soap away, and reached for the towel. You agree? Adrian asked. I'm here to help you, Marcus said. That's all. Adrian smiled. Good answer. That night, Marcus was packing up this small bag of supplies when Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. She looked at him with something like disbelief. You made it to day 4, she said. Marcus zipped the bag. Is that unusual? The record was 6 days. Most people don't make it past 3. She tilted her head. How do you do it? The things he says. Marcus shrugged. I've been through worse. Mrs. Apply. Chen waited for him to elaborate. When he didn't, she nodded slowly and left. Marcus walked across the grounds to the staff quarters. The apartment was dark. Zara was asleep on the small couch, her math homework spread across the coffee table. He covered her with a blanket and sat down in the chair by the window. His phone buzzed. A text from the landlord. Rent was late again. 3rd month in a row. Marcus deleted the message and closed his eyes. The next morning, Zara asked him how his day had been. Fine, he said. She looked at him for a long moment, her mother's eyes seeing more than he wanted her to see. But she didn't push. She just nodded and went back to her cereal. Day 5 brought a different kind of test. Adrian called Marcus into the dining room at 11 in the morning. The table was set for 7. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier overhead. White linen napkins were folded into perfect triangles. I'm hosting a business lunch, Adrian said from his wheelchair. 6 guests. The catering company will deliver the food at noon. You'll serve. Marcus paused. I can call Mrs. Chen. She handles. I'm not asking Mrs. Chen. I'm asking you. Marcus looked at the table, then back at Adrian. That's not part of my job. Your job is whatever I say it is. Adrian's voice was pleasant, almost friendly. Unless you'd like to renegotiate your employment. Marcus said nothing. Good. The guests arrive at 12:15. The investors came in expensive suits and polished shoes. They shook Adrian's hand, complimented the house, and settled into their chairs talking about market projections and risk assessments. Marcus stood near the kitchen door in his plain scrubs, waiting. The catering staff had left everything in warming trays. Marcus carried out the first course. His hands were steady. He placed a plate in front of each guest, working clockwise around the table. One of the men, silver-haired and wearing gold cufflinks, glanced up at him briefly, then looked away. Marcus returned to the kitchen for the main course. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables, small potatoes with rosemary. He brought out the first plate and moved toward the table. Wait. Adrian's voice stopped him mid-step. I didn't say you could serve yet. Marcus held the plate. Heat seeped through the porcelain into his palms. Put it down and wait until I tell you. Marcus set the plate on the sideboard and stepped back. The investors shifted in their seats. One cleared his throat. Another checked his phone. 30 seconds passed, then a full minute. All right, Adrian said. You can serve now. Marcus picked up the plate and placed it in front of the first guest. He went back for the second plate. brought it out, placed it carefully. He was reaching for the third when Adrian spoke again. Actually, hold on. I need water first. Marcus set down the plate and went to the kitchen. Filled a glass with ice and filtered water. Brought it back. Adrian took a sip and nodded. Marcus continued serving. When every guest had their meal, he stepped back to the wall near the kitchen door. His shirt was damp with sweat despite the air conditioning. The investors ate. They discussed quarterly earnings and acquisition targets. Marcus stood silent, his dark hands clasped in front of him, waiting to be dismissed. He wasn't. Halfway through the meal, one of the investors gestured to his empty water glass. Marcus moved forward and refilled it. The man didn't look at him, didn't say thank you. Marcus refilled the other glasses and returned to his position by the wall. Then Adrian dropped his fork. It clattered against the plate, loud in the sudden quiet. All eyes turned to him. Marcus, pick that up. Marcus walked over, bent down, and retrieved the fork. He placed it on the edge of Adrian's plate. Get me a new one. Marcus went to the kitchen. Got a clean fork. Brought it back. Adrian took it, examined it, then set it down without using it. You know what I've noticed? He said, still looking at the fork. You hesitate. Every time I ask you to do something, there's this little pause. Like you're thinking about whether you want to do it. Marcus kept his face blank. Am I wrong? Adrian looked up at him now. Is there something about serving lunch that you find beneath you? The investors stopped eating. Forks hovered over plates. No, sir, Marcus said quietly. No, sir, Adrian repeated. But you hesitated when I asked you to serve today. I saw it. Everyone saw it. He gestured to the table. Didn't you see it? The investors said nothing. One shifted his weight. Another took a long drink of water. Maybe you think this kind of work is beneath you, Adrian continued. His voice was getting louder. Maybe you think you're too good for honest labor. Is that it? No, sir. Then why the hesitation? Why do I have to tell you everything twice? Adrian's face was flushing red. I pay you good money to do a simple job, and you can't even serve a meal without acting like I'm asking you to move mountains. Marcus's jaw tightened. His hands curled slightly at his sides. I'm sorry, he said. I'll do better. Sorry doesn't cut it. Adrian slapped his hand on the table. The glasses shook. I could dock your pay for this. Insubordination. Bad attitude. You understand that? One of the investors looked at his plate. Another checked his watch. Marcus stood there. He thought about Zara's violin case collecting dust in their apartment, the strings she'd never learned to replace, the music teacher who'd called 3 times asking if they were coming back. He thought about the rent notice. 3 months late. Final warning. I apologize, Marcus said to Adrian. Then he turned to the table. I apologize to all of you. My attitude was unprofessional. The words came out flat. Empty. But they came out. The silver-haired man with the cufflinks looked away. A woman in a navy suit studied her napkin. None of them said anything. Adrian leaned back in his wheelchair. His face shifted. The anger melted into something worse. Satisfaction. That's better, he said. You can go. Marcus walked to the kitchen. He stood at the sink and gripped the counter edge. His knuckles went pale against his brown skin. He breathed slowly. In. Out. In. Through the doorway, he heard the investors resume their conversation. Quieter now. Uncomfortable. He stayed in the kitchen until they left. The evening air was cool when Marcus finally drove to Zara's after-school program. She was waiting outside with her backpack, working on a drawing in her sketchbook. She climbed into the passenger seat and buckled her seatbelt. How was your day? She asked. Fine. She pulled out her colored pencils and went back to her drawing. Marcus pulled into traffic. The radio played something soft and instrumental. After a few blocks, Zara looked up. Is the man you work for nice? Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Daddy? He pays well, Marcus said. Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You don't have to lie to me. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He pulled over into a parking lot and put the car in park. Turned to look at his daughter. She had her mother's eyes. Dark and serious and seeing too much. He's not nice, Marcus said. But the job pays well. And that matters right now. Zara nodded slowly. She was 11 years old, but she understood more than most adults gave her credit for. How long are you going to stay? She asked. Marcus didn't have an answer. They drove home in silence. Marcus made dinner. helped Zara with her homework, put her to bed. Then he sat alone in the dark living room with his phone in his hand. He pulled up the job search app he'd been avoiding, scrolled through listings, personal care assistant positions, security guard openings, overnight warehouse work. None of them paid what Adrian paid. He thought about walking into that study tomorrow and quitting. Thought about the look on Adrian's face when Marcus told him exactly what he could do with his job. Then he thought about the eviction notice that would come if he missed another month's rent. He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Outside, the sound of traffic hummed in the distance. Inside, the apartment was silent except for the soft rhythm of Zara's breathing from the bedroom. Marcus sat there for 20 minutes, not moving, trying to decide if there was any amount of money in the world worth what he'd done today. By morning, he still didn't have an answer. Week 2 started with a glass of water hitting the marble floor. Adrian knocked it off the side table with a deliberate flick of his wrist. Ice cubes scattered across the polished stone. Water pooled near Marcus's feet. "Clean that up," Adrian said. Marcus looked at the spill, then at Adrian. "Now." Marcus walked to the kitchen, got paper towels and a bucket. When he came back, Adrian was watching him with cold eyes. "On your knees," Adrian said. "I want to make sure you get every drop." Marcus knelt. The marble was hard and cold beneath his knees. He soaked up the water, gathered the ice cubes, wiped the floor until it gleamed. Adrian sat above him the entire time, not speaking, just watching. When Marcus stood, his knees ached. "Good," Adrian said. "You can go." The next day, payday, Adrian didn't mention the check. Marcus waited until evening, then knocked on the study door. "What?" Adrian called. Marcus stepped inside. "Today's the 15th. I haven't received my check yet." Adrian looked up from his laptop. "Oh, is it the 15th already? Time flies." He went back to his screen. Marcus waited. "Was there something else?" Adrian asked without looking up. "The check," Marcus said quietly. "Right, I'll get to it." Marcus stood there for another moment, then left. The check didn't come that day, or the next. On the third day, Marcus knocked on the study door again. "You again," Adrian said. "What now?" "My check. It's 3 days late." Adrian sighed heavily. "You know, the constant pestering is really unprofessional. I said I'd get to it." He opened a desk drawer, pulled out an envelope, and tossed it onto the desk. "They're happy?" Marcus picked it up. "Thank you. Try not to spend it all in one place." That Friday, Adrian hosted a dinner party. 8 guests in evening wear, drinking wine from crystal glasses. Marcus was called in to help serve dessert. Adrian introduced him to a woman in diamonds and silk. "This is Marcus," Adrian said with a smile. "The help who's overstaying is welcome. Most of them run screaming by now, but this one seems to have staying power." The woman laughed uncomfortably. Marcus set down the dessert plates and retreated to the kitchen. The household staff noticed. Of course they noticed. Maria, one of the housekeepers, cornered Marcus in the service hallway during week 3. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and permanent worry lines. "How do you do it?" she asked. "The things he says to you." Marcus adjusted his grip on the laundry basket he was carrying. "It's just a job. No job is worth that." Marcus looked at her. "I've been through worse." She waited for him to explain. When he didn't, she shook her head and walked away. But the question stayed with Marcus. How did he do it? Sometimes, when Adrian's voice rose, when the insults came fast and cutting, Marcus felt himself drift. Not away exactly, backward. A hospital tent in Kandahar, desert heat pressing down like a weight. His hands moving fast, steadying a soldier whose spine had been shattered by shrapnel. The kid was 19, screaming, and Marcus's voice stayed level and calm. "Stay with me. Breathe. I've got you." A laugh. Simone's laugh, bright and unexpected, cutting through the tension in the medical unit. She was wearing her uniform, her hair pulled back tight, exhausted but smiling at something one of the nurses said. A classroom at Walter Reed. Marcus standing in front of 30 medical personnel, teaching them the rehabilitation protocol he'd developed, his hands demonstrating proper positioning for a patient with high thoracic injury. The room silent, everyone watching, taking notes. The memories came in flashes, wordless, triggered by moments Marcus couldn't predict. When Adrian screamed at him for bringing coffee that was too hot, Marcus's hands remembered adjusting an IV line while mortars fell outside the tent. When Adrian made him reorganize the same filing cabinet 3 times in one afternoon, Marcus remembered teaching a paralyzed sergeant how to dress himself. The slow patience required, the tiny victories celebrated. The past surfaced like debris after a storm. Marcus didn't want it. He pushed it down, locked it away, but it came anyway. Around week 4, Marcus started noticing other things he wished he could ignore. Adrian's left shoulder was dropping. His posture in the wheelchair was collapsing inward, creating pressure points that would lead to sores if left unchecked. His muscle tone in his arms was good, but below the injury site, the atrophy was progressing faster than it should. Marcus watched Adrian transfer from wheelchair to bed one evening. The technique was sloppy. Dangerous even. One wrong shift, and Adrian could injure himself further. The physical therapist came twice a week. Marcus saw her arrive, spend an hour with Adrian, then leave. He saw the exercises she prescribed. Basic. Barely challenging. The kind of routine designed to maintain, not improve. She was collecting a check, nothing more. Marcus said nothing. Not his job. He was here to help Adrian get dressed, manage medications, endure the daily humiliation. That was what he was paid for. But his hands knew better. When he helped Adrian into the wheelchair each morning, his fingers automatically corrected the positioning. A slight shift of weight, an adjustment to the backrest angle. Small things Adrian didn't notice. Marcus's body remembered what his mind refused to acknowledge. The call came on a Tuesday morning in week 4. Zara's school was closed for emergency maintenance. A pipe had burst. All students sent home. Marcus had no choice. He brought her to the estate. She sat quietly in the staff quarters, reading a library book about birds. Marcus checked on her between tasks, making sure she had water and snacks. Around noon, Adrian called for him. "Bring your daughter," Adrian said. "I'd like to meet her." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he walked back to the apartment and found Zara curled up on the small couch. "The man I work for wants to meet you," Marcus said. Zara looked up. "The mean one?" "Be polite," Marcus said. "Please." They walked across the grounds together. Zara's hand was small in his. When they entered the main house, her eyes went wide at the chandeliers, the paintings, the gleaming floors. Adrian was in the sunroom, positioned by the windows. He smiled when they entered. "So this is Zara," he said warmly. "I've heard about you." Zara moved closer to her father. "Do you like living here?" Adrian asked. "The grounds are quite beautiful." "It's okay," Zara said quietly. "Your father works very hard. I hope you appreciate that." "I do." Adrian nodded, still smiling. "That's good. It's important to know your place in the world. Your father understands that." Zara didn't respond. She just looked at Adrian with those serious eyes that missed nothing. "You can go," Adrian said after a moment. Marcus walked Zara back to the apartment. She didn't speak until they were inside. "He's scary," she whispered. "I know," Marcus said. That evening, after Zara was safely at after-school care and Marcus returned to the estate, Adrian called him into the state. "Cute kid," Adrian said. "Though I have to say, bringing your child to work makes this place look like a charity case." He paused. "We're not running a daycare here, Webb. Let's keep that in mind." Marcus stood there, his hands at his sides, and said nothing. But that night, alone in the staff quarters, he sat at the small kitchen table and stared at his hands. The same hands that had saved lives. The same hands that had held Simone's before they put her on the transport home in a flag-draped casket. The same hands that now cleaned up spilled water and endured daily humiliation for a paycheck. He flexed his fingers. They still remembered everything he'd tried to forget. The question started 3 days after Zara met Adrian. They were eating dinner in the small staff apartment. Spaghetti with jarred sauce, garlic bread from the discount bakery. Zara twisted pasta around her fork and asked, "Why is that man so angry?" Marcus looked up from his plate. "He's hurt. His body doesn't work the way it used to. But lots of people get hurt. They're not all mean." Marcus took a drink of water. "People handle pain differently." Zara chewed thoughtfully. "Does it hurt all the time?" "Some of it, probably." "Then why doesn't he try to get better?" Marcus set down his fork. The question landed heavier than she meant it to. "It's complicated." "How?" "He doesn't think he can get better, so he stopped trying." Zara considered this. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Why does he treat you like that?" Marcus didn't have a good answer. He picked up his fork and went back to eating. But Zara wasn't done. Over the next few days, the questions kept coming. Always simple, always direct, always cutting straight to the thing Marcus was trying not to think about. On Thursday, while Marcus helped her with math homework, she asked, "Would Mom have helped him?" Marcus's pen stopped moving. "What?" The angry man. "If Mom was still here and he needed a doctor, would she have helped him?" Marcus set the pen down carefully. "Yes." "Even though he's mean?" "Yes." "Why?" Marcus looked at his daughter. She had Simone's eyes, dark and serious and seeing too much. "Your mom believed everyone deserved help," he said quietly, "even people who didn't seem to deserve it." "Why?" "Because being a doctor wasn't about whether someone was nice to you. It was about whether they needed you." Zara absorbed this. She went back to her math worksheet, but Marcus could tell she was still thinking. After a few minutes, she looked up again. "Do you think he needs you?" Marcus didn't answer. At the estate, something was shifting. Adrian had stopped talking as much. The insults still came, but they were different now. Distracted. His eyes followed Marcus around the room, tracking movements Marcus didn't know he was making. On Monday morning, Marcus helped Adrian transfer from bed to wheelchair. His hands positioned Adrian's weight distribution automatically, a slight shift that made the transfer smoother. Adrian noticed. "Where'd you learn that?" "Learn what?" "That adjustment." "The way you shifted my center of gravity." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Experience." "Experience doing what?" "This job." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "I've had 43 assistants. None of them moved like you do." Marcus said nothing. He finished the transfer and stepped back. "You anticipate things," Adrian continued. "Before I ask for something, you're already moving to get it. Before my shoulder drops, you're already adjusting the chair. That's not something you learn in a week." "I pay attention." "It's more than that." Marcus turned toward the door. "Do you need anything else?" "Who are you?" Marcus stopped. "You know who I am. You have my employment file." "I have a file," Adrian said, "but it doesn't tell me much. 3 years of odd jobs. Before that, nothing. People don't come from nowhere, Webb. People come from lots of places. Not like this." Adrian rolled closer. "I've been thinking about that night, the medical crisis, the way you handled it. That wasn't first aid training. That wasn't first aid training. That was something else." Marcus met his eyes. "I did what needed to be done." "Where'd you train? I should check your medication schedule." "Answer the question." "I need to go." Marcus left before Adrian could push further, but he felt the scrutiny following him like a weight. Over the next few days, Adrian's questions became more pointed, more specific. Where did Marcus go to school? What did he do before this? Had he ever worked in healthcare? Marcus deflected, changed subjects, found reasons to leave the room. But Adrian was watching. Always watching. Always watching. The way Marcus lifted, the way he positioned, the small corrections he made without thinking. Every unconscious movement was being cataloged, analyzed, questioned. Week 6 arrived with early spring rain. The estate grounds turned gray and cold. Water streamed down the windows of the staff quarters. Zara sat at the small kitchen table, drawing. Marcus made her hot chocolate and sat across from her. "Daddy?" she said without looking up from her paper. "Yeah? You're different when you come home now." Marcus's hand stilled around his coffee mug. "Different how?" "I don't know. Like you're thinking about something all the time." She was right. He was thinking about something all the time. She was right. He was thinking about Adrian's declining muscle tone, about the rehabilitation potential being wasted by therapists who didn't care and a patient who'd given up. "Just work stuff," Marcus said. Zara nodded and went back to her drawing, but her question hung in the air long after she went to bed. That night, Marcus returned to the main house for the evening shift. Adrian was in the study, working on his laptop. The room smelled like leather and expensive cologne. "Webb," Adrian called when Marcus passed the doorway. "Come here." Marcus stepped inside. The desk lamp cast sharp shadows across Adrian's face. "I made some calls today," Adrian said. "Called some people I know in healthcare staffing, asked if they'd heard of you." Marcus's pulse quickened, but his face stayed calm. Nobody had, Adrian continued. Which is strange, because someone with your skills should have a reputation, should have references, should have something. He closed the laptop. But you don't exist, not professionally. It's like you appeared out of thin air 3 years ago. People change careers. Not like this. Adrian leaned forward. I'm going to figure out who you are. Whatever you're hiding, I'll find it. Marcus turned to leave. One more thing, Adrian said. I'm running a deeper background check, the kind that costs real money. If there's anything you want to tell me before I find it myself, now would be the time. Marcus walked out without responding. He made his rounds, checked the medication schedule, locked up the main house. Around 11:30, he was in the kitchen preparing Adrian's late-night supplements when he heard a sound from the bedroom. Not a call for help, just a noise. Wrong somehow. Marcus set down the pill organizer and walked quickly down the hall. Adrian was in bed, propped up on pillows. His face was flushed. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool temperature. He was pressing his palm against his temple. You all right? Marcus asked from the doorway. Headache. Adrian's voice was tight. Just a headache. I get them sometimes. Marcus stepped closer. Adrian's skin was too red, his breathing shallow. How long have you had it? I don't know. 20 minutes. It's nothing. Marcus's training whispered warnings. Flushed skin. Headache. Sweating. But Adrian's vitals had been fine an hour ago. You should let me check your blood pressure. I'm fine. Go away. Marcus hesitated. He stood in the hallway for a long moment listening. When he didn't hear anything else, he went back to the kitchen. But the warning sign stayed with him. Familiar. Dangerous. He finished preparing the supplements and checked the house one final time before heading back to the staff quarters. Outside, rain fell steady and cold. The grounds were dark except for the path lights leading to his apartment. Inside, everything was quiet. Zara asleep in her room. Marcus sat in the dark living room and stared at his phone. He should call someone. Should insist Adrian get checked. But Adrian had dismissed him. Had told him to go away. It was probably nothing. Just a headache like Adrian said. Marcus told himself that. Tried to believe it, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. 2 hours later, Marcus's phone rang. He was asleep in the staff apartment, fully clothed on top of the covers. He grabbed the phone before the second ring. The screen showed the estate's main house number. Webb. His voice was rough. Mr. Webb, you need to come now. The on-call nurse. Her voice was climbing toward panic. Something's wrong with Mr. Castellane. Marcus was already moving. He pulled on his shoes and ran across the dark grounds. The path lights blurred past him. Cold air burned his lungs. The main house was lit up. Marcus took the stairs 2 at a time. Adrian's bedroom door was open. The nurse stood beside the bed, phone in her shaking hand. Adrian was propped against the pillows, his face dark red, almost purple. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His breathing came fast and shallow. Marcus stopped in the doorway. One look told him everything. I'm calling 911, the nurse said. Her fingers fumbled with the phone. Stop. Marcus's voice cut through the room. The nurse looked up. He needs. Put the phone down. Something in Marcus's tone made her freeze. He crossed to the bed in 3 strides, placed 2 fingers against Adrian's neck. The pulse hammered against his fingertips, racing far too fast. Blood pressure? Marcus asked. I took it 5 minutes ago. It was 2010 over 130. Maybe higher now. I don't. Get the cuff. The nurse scrambled for the equipment. Marcus leaned over Adrian, his brown hands steady against Adrian's flushed skin. He checked pupil response, checked skin temperature. His mind was already running through protocols he'd sworn never to use again. Adrian's eyes found his. Wide, frightened. Can't breathe, Adrian gasped. Can't, chest hurts. You're going to be fine, Marcus said. His voice dropped lower, steady and certain. Look at me, not the ceiling. Me. Adrian's eyes locked on Marcus's face. Your blood pressure is spiking. That's why your head hurts, why you can't catch your breath. But we're going to fix it, right now. The nurse returned with the blood pressure cuff. Her hands shook as she tried to fit it around Adrian's arm. Give it to me, Marcus said. He took the cuff and wrapped it expertly, pumped it up. Watch the gauge, 220 over 140. Stroke territory. What do we do? The nurse whispered. Marcus was already moving. His hands went to Adrian's catheter line, following it down beneath the sheets. He'd seen this before, dozens of times. High-level spinal injuries, autonomic dysreflexia triggered by bladder distension, the body's emergency response going haywire because the signals couldn't get past the injury. He found the kink in the catheter tube, a simple twist, nothing dramatic, but it was blocking drainage, causing pressure to build, sending Adrian's autonomic nervous system into crisis mode. Marcus straightened the line. Check the flow. Urine began draining properly into the collection bag. Sit him up more, Marcus said. Elevate his head 30 degrees. It'll help lower the pressure. The nurse adjusted the bed controls. Marcus stayed at Adrian's side, his fingers still on that pulse point, counting beats, feeling the rhythm start to slow. Breathe with me, Marcus said to Adrian. In through your nose. Hold. Out through your mouth. Slow. Adrian tried to follow. Slow. Adrian tried to follow. His breath hitched and stuttered, but he tried. Good. Again. Marcus watched the seconds tick past. The purple red began to fade toward normal flush. The pulse under his fingers started dropping from sprint to fast walk. 4 minutes after Marcus entered the room, Adrian's breathing steadied. 10 minutes in, his blood pressure read 160/95, still elevated, but falling. Not stroke level anymore. The nurse stared at Marcus like he pulled off a magic trick. Where did you learn to do that? Marcus didn't answer. He checked the catheter one more time, made sure everything was flowing properly, then stepped back from the bed. Adrian's eyes never left him. You should be stable now, Marcus said. But we'll monitor you through the night. If your pressure spikes again, we call 911. The nurse nodded quickly. I'll stay with him. I'll check every 15 minutes. Marcus started toward the door. Webb. Adrian's voice was weak but clear. Marcus stopped, turned. Thank you. Marcus nodded once and left. He walked back to the staff apartment on legs that suddenly felt unsteady. His hands were trembling now, after the fact, the adrenaline draining away. He sat down on the couch and stared at his palms. They remembered. Everything he'd tried to forget. They remembered exactly what to do. The next morning, Marcus arrived for his shift expecting questions. He got silence instead. Adrian watched him move around the room, setting out medications, preparing breakfast, watched with the intensity of someone studying a puzzle they couldn't solve. You handled that situation well last night, Adrian said finally. Marcus poured orange juice into a glass. The nurse did fine. The nurse was about to cause more problems than she solved. You knew exactly what was happening, what to look for, what to fix. Lucky guess. That wasn't luck. Adrian's voice sharpened. That was training. Experience. The kind you don't get from a weekend first aid course. Marcus set the juice on the bedside table and turned to leave. I've been thinking, Adrian said, about the way you move, the way you position my chair, the way you corrected that crisis without hesitation. You know medicine, Webb. Real medicine, not the basics they teach nursing assistants. Marcus kept walking. Where'd you train? Marcus opened the door. I'm going to find out, Adrian called after him. Whatever you're hiding, I will find it. Marcus closed the door behind him and stood in the hallway. Through the walls, he heard Adrian pick up his phone, heard him start making calls. Over the next 2 weeks, the interrogation intensified. Adrian asked about Marcus's education, his work history, whether he'd ever worked in hospitals, whether he'd served in the military. Marcus deflected every question, gave vague answers or no answers at all. But Adrian was relentless. He made phone calls when he thought Marcus wasn't listening. Calls to background check companies. Calls to people he knew in healthcare administration. Marcus caught fragments of conversations through doorways. Nothing before that, too clean, people don't vanish. Adrian started testing him. Asking technical questions about medical procedures. Describing symptoms and watching how Marcus reacted. Positioning himself awkwardly in the wheelchair just to see if Marcus would correct it instinctively. Marcus felt the net tightening. Every day, Adrian got a little closer to the truth. Every day, the questions got more specific. He thought about quitting, about taking Zara and disappearing again, the way he'd done 12 years ago. But the money was keeping them alive. 3 more months, and they'd be caught up on rent. 6 more, and they'd have enough saved for a security deposit on a better place. He just needed to hold out a little longer. Week 9 arrived cold and gray. Marcus finished his evening shift and was heading for the door when Adrian called him back. "Webb, my study, now." The study was dark except for the desk lamp. Adrian sat behind the massive oak desk, backlit, his face half in shadow. A folder lay closed in front of him. Marcus stood in the doorway. "Close the door," Adrian said. Marcus closed it. The click echoed in the quiet room. "Sit down." "I'd rather stand." Adrian's smile was cold. "I know you're not who you say you are." Marcus said nothing. "I don't know who you are yet, but I know you're not some random caregiver who learned medical intervention from YouTube." Adrian opened the folder. "So you have two choices. You tell me the truth right now, or I fire you and make sure you never work in this industry again." Marcus looked at the man in the wheelchair, at the expensive suit and the confident expression and the folder full of whatever Adrian's investigators had managed to dig up. He thought about Zara asking why the man wouldn't try to get better. He thought about walking away, about protecting his secret for another 12 years. Then he thought about Simone, about the promise he'd made to himself the day they buried her. Marcus pulled out the chair across from Adrian's desk and sat down. "My full name," he said quietly, "is Marcus Alejo Webb. My full name is Marcus Alejo Webb." The words hung in the air between them. Adrian's eyes narrowed, waiting for more. Marcus took a slow breath. "From 2001 to 2013, I was a physical therapist and rehabilitation specialist with the United States military. I worked primarily at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. My specialty was catastrophic spinal injury recovery." Adrian's face changed. The smugness drained away, replaced by something sharper. "I developed protocols for high-level thoracic and cervical injuries," Marcus continued. His voice stayed level, factual. "Worked with soldiers who'd been told they'd never walk again. Some of them did. Most of them improved significantly beyond initial prognosis. And you just walked away from that?" Adrian's voice was quiet now. "My wife was killed in Afghanistan, IED outside Kandahar. She was an army trauma surgeon." Marcus paused. "I left the service 12 years ago. Took my daughter and disappeared. I haven't worked in rehabilitation since." The desk lamp cast long shadows across Adrian's face. He leaned back in his wheelchair, processing. "So all this time," Adrian said slowly, "you've been watching me rot, watching my body deteriorate. And you could have helped. You could have actually done something. That's not my job anymore. But you know how." Adrian's voice rose. "You know exactly what I need. What exercises, what protocols, what interventions, and you've just been standing there, playing assistant, letting me think I'm finished." Marcus said nothing. "Do you know what I've been through?" Adrian's hands gripped the wheelchair arms. 2 years of specialists telling me to accept my limitations. Physical therapists who go through the motions for a paycheck. Everyone treating me like I'm already dead from the waist down. And the whole time, I had someone in my house who could actually help me. I told you, that's not who I am anymore. Because you're too broken?" Adrian's voice turned venomous. "Too scared? You've watched me deteriorate for 2 months, knowing you could actually fix this, but you're too selfish to do your real job. You're not noble, Webb. You're a coward." The word hit like a fist. Marcus's jaw tightened. "A coward," Adrian repeated. "Hiding from your own skill because you lost someone. Because you failed once. So now everyone else can just suffer while you collect a paycheck and pretend you're someone else." Marcus turned toward the door. "I looked into you more than you know," Adrian said. "I know Zara's school. Washington Elementary, right? I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know your landlord's already filed eviction papers. I know you're hanging by a thread." Marcus's hand froze on the doorknob. "So here's what's going to happen." Adrian's voice went cold and precise. "You're going to help me walk again. You're going to use everything you know, every technique you developed, and you're going to fix what those other therapists couldn't. Or I'm going to make sure you and your daughter have nothing. I'll call your landlord personally. I'll make sure every potential employer in this industry knows you're unreliable. I'll destroy what's left of your pathetic little life." Marcus stood there, his back to Adrian, his dark hands still gripping the brass doorknob. Every muscle in his body wanted to walk out, to take Zara and run the way he'd run 12 years ago. But Zara's voice echoed in his head. Why doesn't he try to get better? And underneath that, quieter but insistent, Simone's voice. Everyone deserves help. Everyone deserves help, even the people who don't seem to deserve it. Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. His breath came slow and controlled. He thought about the medical reality he'd seen during the crisis. Adrian's injury was high thoracic, T4 or T5, incomplete. There was potential there, real potential. With proper intervention, aggressive rehabilitation, the kind of program no one had been willing to push him through, Adrian could improve. Significantly, Marcus thought about all the soldiers he'd worked with, the ones who cursed him, threatened him, begged him to stop. The ones who cried and screamed and told him they'd rather die than do another rep. And the ones who walked out of Walter Reed on their own 2 feet because Marcus refused to let them quit. He thought about Simone, who spent her whole career saving people, the grateful ones and the ungrateful ones, the kind ones and the cruel ones. Because that's what doctors did. That's what healers did. Marcus turned around slowly, faced Adrian across the desk. "You want to walk again?" Adrian's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected Marcus to come back. "Then shut up," Marcus said. His voice dropped lower, steady and unmistakable in its authority. "And do exactly what I tell you." Adrian opened his mouth. "No complaints," Marcus continued. "No threats. No commentary about my life or my daughter. You follow the program, or I leave. You question my methods, I leave. You miss a session, I leave. You try to control this process, I leave." He paused. "Those are my terms." The silence stretched between them. Adrian stared at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. The quiet assistant who'd endured 2 months of abuse without breaking, who'd cleaned floors and served meals and never raised his voice. That man was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely. "What kind of program?" Adrian asked. His voice had lost its edge. "The kind that's going to hurt. The kind that's going to push you past every limit you think you have. The kind where you're going to beg me to stop, and I won't." Marcus crossed his arms. "You wanted someone who could actually help you. This is what that looks like." Adrian's throat moved as he swallowed. "How long?" 12 weeks minimum, maybe longer. And then we'll see where you are." Adrian looked down at his hands, at his legs, useless in the chair, at the life he'd lost and the rage he'd been channeling into everyone around him. "Fine," he said quietly. "I need to hear you say it," Marcus said. "All of it." Adrian looked up. Their eyes met across the desk. "I'll follow the program," Adrian said. "No complaints, no threats. I'll do exactly what you tell me." Marcus nodded once. "We start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Wear comfortable clothes." He walked to the door, opened it, then paused and looked back. "One more thing," Marcus said. "You ever threaten my daughter again, and I don't care what happens to me. I walk. We clear?" Adrian's face paled slightly. Marcus left the study and walked through the dark house. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting. He'd just done the one thing he swore he'd never do again. He'd agreed to be a healer. Outside, rain had started to fall. Marcus stood on the estate's back steps and let the cold water hit his face. Somewhere in the darkness, he could feel Simone watching, could almost hear her voice. "It's about time." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, started typing. Baseline assessment, range of motion evaluation, core strength protocol. The framework of a rehabilitation program began taking shape under his fingertips, muscle memory and 12 years of buried knowledge flowing back like water through a broken dam. By tomorrow morning, Adrian Castellane's real education would begin. Week 1 started at 6 in the morning. Marcus arrived at Adrian's bedroom carrying a set of resistance bands and a foam mat. Adrian sat in his wheelchair, wearing athletic clothes, looking like he regretted every decision that had led to this moment. "Lie down on the mat," Marcus said. "I need help transferring." "No, you don't. Use your arms." "Figure it out." Adrian's face flushed. "I can't just—" "Then we're done. I'll pack my things." Marcus turned toward the door. He made it 3 steps before Adrian spoke again. "Wait." Marcus waited. Behind him, he heard Adrian grip the wheelchair arms, heard the strain in his breathing as he lowered himself awkwardly to the floor. It took 2 minutes. It was ugly and graceless and exactly what Adrian needed to do. "Good," Marcus said without turning around. "Now we start." The first session lasted 45 minutes. Marcus pushed Adrian through core stabilization exercises that looked simple but demanded everything. Planks on forearms, side holds, controlled breathing while maintaining positions that made Adrian's entire body shake. Adrian lasted 12 minutes before he started cursing. I can't do this. 5 more seconds. I'm done. 4 more seconds. Adrian collapsed. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His breathing came in gasps. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His breathing came in gasps. But you won't stay that way. Same time tomorrow. Week 2 brought screaming. Adrian tried to reassert control through cruelty, calling Marcus every name he could think of, making threats, demanding Marcus stop pushing him so hard. Marcus responded by adding repetitions. You want to yell at me? Marcus asked calmly. That's 10 more reps. You work for me. 15 more. Adrian learned quickly. The insults stopped. But the fury remained, redirected now into the exercises themselves. He fought his own weakness with a rage that sometimes felt like it would consume him whole. Mrs. Chen found Marcus in the kitchen one morning during week 3. She'd been watching the sessions through the doorway, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. He cried yesterday, she whispered, during the leg exercises. I've never seen him cry. The body remembers pain, Marcus said. Sometimes that's what wakes it up. Week 4 brought the first real breakthrough. Adrian was working on hip flexor engagement, trying to activate muscles that hadn't fired in 2 years. Marcus had his hands on Adrian's leg, feeling for the smallest contraction. Again, Marcus said. I am trying. Try harder. I can't feel anything. It's not working. Again. Adrian closed his eyes, concentrated, and Marcus felt it, the faintest flutter of muscle beneath his palm, barely there, but present. There, Marcus said. You just did it. Adrian's eyes opened. I didn't feel. You did it. Your body remembers. We build from here. Something changed in Adrian's face, not hope exactly, but the beginning of possibility. Week 6, week 7, week 8. The sessions grew longer, more complex. Marcus added resistance training, proprioception work, balance exercises on unstable surfaces. Adrian fell constantly, got back up. It was too intimate, too raw. This wasn't their employer anymore. This was a man being unmade and rebuilt, piece by piece. Late one night during week 9, after a brutal session, Adrian sat on the edge of the exercise mat while Marcus packed up equipment. The room smelled like sweat and the menthol cream Mrs. Chen had started keeping stocked. The soldiers you worked with, Adrian said. Did they hate you? Marcus paused. Most of them. At first, and after. Some of them still hated me. But they walked out of Walter Reed on their own feet. That's what mattered. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Did any of them fail? Did any of them not get better? Some, Marcus said, not because the body couldn't do it, because they gave up. I won't give up. Marcus looked at him. Adrian's face was drawn, exhausted, but there was steel underneath now. Real determination, not the performance of it. I know, Marcus said. Week 12 brought sensation back to Adrian's right quadriceps, partial, incomplete, but undeniable. He could feel pressure, temperature, the ghost of touch returning to dead tissue. Week 15. Adrian stood for the first time, supported by parallel bars. He held himself upright for 8 seconds before his legs gave out. He tried again immediately, made it to 10 seconds, week 18. Adrian took his first step, 1 foot forward, weight supported by the bars, Marcus positioned behind him ready to catch if he fell. It wasn't graceful. It barely qualified as walking. But it was movement. Progress. Life. Zara noticed the change in her father. Marcus came home different now, still exhausted, but carrying himself straighter, more present, less hollowed out by grief he'd been carrying for 12 years. Is the mean man still mean? She asked one evening while they made dinner together. He's trying to be better, Marcus said. It's hard for him. Are you helping him? Marcus thought about the answer, about Adrian's tears and screaming and the small victories that came in millimeters, about the way Adrian had started saying thank you after sessions, quietly, like he was learning a foreign language. I'm trying, Marcus said. Zara set down her spoon and hugged him. Then I'm proud of you, Daddy. Marcus closed his eyes and held his daughter close. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, something that had been broken for a very long time was slowly starting to heal. Week 21 arrived with an invitation to a gala. Black tie, 300 guests, live media coverage. The event was a fundraiser for spinal injury research, and Adrian was scheduled to speak. A brief address from his wheelchair, a figurehead rolled out to make donors feel good about their contributions. Marcus found Adrian in his study, staring at the invitation with an expression caught between fear and something else. Something that might have been hope. "I want to try," Adrian said quietly. At the gala. "I want to try standing." "You're not ready for that." "You said partial weight bearing was possible now." "You said, in a controlled environment, not in front of 300 people with cameras." Adrian looked up. His face was set. "I've spent 2 years being wheeled around like a prop. This is the first time I've actually worked for something. I want people to see what's possible." Marcus studied him. The old Adrian would have demanded this, would have threatened. This Adrian was asking, "If you fall, then I fall. But at least I tried." Marcus thought about the soldiers at Walter Reed. The ones who pushed past every reasonable limit because they needed the world to see them fighting, who needed to prove to themselves that they weren't finished. "We have 2 weeks, Marcus said. "We train every day, we build your standing endurance, we practice the transfer, and if you're not ready when the night comes, you speak from the chair. No arguments." "Agreed." Marcus pulled out his phone and started making notes. Training schedule, contingency plans, risk assessment, risk assessment, risk assessment. "Marcus." Adrian's voice was soft. Marcus looked up. "Thank you," Adrian said, "for staying, for pushing me, for not giving up even when I wanted to." Marcus nodded once. "Same time tomorrow, 6 a.m. We have work to do." The night of the gala arrived. Marcus stood in the wings of the ballroom stage, watching 300 people in evening wear take their seats. Crystal glasses caught the light from chandeliers overhead. A camera crew set up at the back of the room. Everything gleamed and sparkled and felt impossibly far from the sweat and struggle of the rehabilitation room. Adrian sat in his wheelchair beside Marcus, wearing a tailored tuxedo. His hands gripped the armrests. His breathing was controlled but fast. "I can't do this," Adrian whispered. "You can." "What if I fall? What if I can't hold it?" Marcus crouched down so they were eye level. "You've been standing for 12 minutes at a time in practice. You've taken steps with a walker. Your body knows what to do." "But trust the work," Marcus said quietly. "Trust what we've built." The announcer called Adrian's name. The audience applauded. Marcus pushed the wheelchair onto the stage, positioning it behind the podium. The microphone stand gleamed under the lights. Adrian began his prepared speech. His voice was steady, practiced. He talked about spinal injury research, about the importance of funding, about hope and resilience and determination. Standard remarks, polished and empty. And then, midway through, Adrian paused. The room went quiet. He gripped the arms of his wheelchair, looked out at the audience, and made a choice. Adrian's hands gripped the wheelchair arms. The ballroom went quiet, 300 people watching, waiting to see what he would do. He pushed himself up. The effort was visible, enormous. Every muscle in his upper body engaged, his face contorted with strain. For a moment, it looked like he might collapse back into the chair. Then his legs locked. He was standing. The walker waited beside him. Marcus had positioned it there before the speech started, close enough to reach. Adrian's right hand found it first, then his left. He gripped the metal frame like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. He took a step. His left leg moved forward, shaking, unsteady. Weight transferred. The walker slid forward. Another step. His right leg this time. The movement was careful, controlled, nothing like normal walking. But it was movement. Progress. A third step. A fourth. The ballroom erupted. People rose from their seats. The applause was deafening, thunderous, shaking the crystal chandeliers overhead. Women were crying. Men wiped their eyes. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. Adrian stood there, gripping the walker, his chest heaving with the effort. The ovation continued. 30 seconds. A minute. Longer. But Adrian wasn't smiling. He was staring out at the crowd with an expression caught somewhere between triumph and something that looked like grief. He moved back to the microphone, still gripping the walker for support, leaned into it. The room slowly quieted, people settling back into their seats, waiting for him to speak. "Everything I just told you about determination and resilience," Adrian said, his voice rough, "is a lie." The room stilled completely. I didn't do this. Adrian's hand left the walker long enough to point toward the wings of the stage. That man did. 300 faces turned. Marcus stood at the edge of the stage in his simple black suit, his dark skin catching the stage lights, his expression unreadable. His name is Marcus Webb, Adrian continued. For 5 months, I've treated him like garbage. I've said things to him I'm ashamed to repeat. I've mocked him, degraded him, and tried to break him the way I've broken 43 other people who tried to help me. Adrian's voice cracked. He gripped the microphone stand harder. And he stayed. He stayed when no one else would. He pushed me past every limit I thought I had. He saved my life. And I need you all to know that everything good about this moment belongs to him. The applause started again, but softer now, uncertain. Then a man in the third row stood up. He was in his 60s, wearing a tuxedo with military bearing evident in every line of his body. He stared at Marcus with his mouth open. Marcus Alejo Webb, the man said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. The Walter Reed legend. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't move. The man turned to the people at his table. That's Marcus Alejo Webb. He pioneered spinal injury rehabilitation protocols for special operations. He got soldiers back in the field that everyone else said would never walk again. Someone pulled out a phone, started searching. Within 30 seconds, the name was rippling through the room like wildfire. I worked with him in 2011, someone else said from a different table. He's a legend. I heard his techniques are still being taught at Walter Reed. Why is he working as a caregiver? The revelation spread from table to table, phone to phone, whisper to whisper. Within 3 minutes, the entire ballroom knew that the quiet man in the borrowed suit was someone whose expertise you couldn't buy, whose reputation preceded him in every military hospital in the country, whose name was still spoken with reverence 12 years after he'd disappeared. Adrian stood at the podium, watching the realization wash over the crowd, watching them understand that the man he'd spent 5 months abusing was someone he could never have afforded to hire. Someone whose dignity he'd tried to destroy was someone whose dignity he'd tried to destroy was someone who'd saved lives Adrian could never touch. The humiliation on Adrian's face was complete, not delivered through revenge or payback, but through the simple exposure of truth. His own confession had revealed his profound smallness. Marcus stood quietly through all of it. He didn't move toward the stage, didn't raise his hand in acknowledgement, just stood there with the same calm steadiness he'd shown every single day for 21 weeks. Adrian looked at him across the stage. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Adrian saw Marcus clearly, not as an assistant or a servant or someone to be broken, but as someone who'd chosen to stay when every rational reason said to leave, someone who'd given everything he had to someone who'd given him nothing but cruelty in return. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly into the microphone. The words were meant for Marcus. The whole room heard them anyway. Marcus nodded once. Then he turned and walked off the stage. The days after the gala moved quickly. Adrian called Marcus into his study 3 days later, offered him a position as director of a new foundation for veteran rehabilitation, a multi-million-dollar operation designed to provide the kind of care Adrian had received to veterans who couldn't afford it. "I'll do it," Marcus said, on one condition: name it. The foundation funds music programs in underserved schools, starting with Zara's district. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. "Done. Anything else?" "The first scholarship. I want it named after my wife, Dr. Simone Webb." "Dr. Simone Webb. Consider it done." 6 months later, the foundation was operational. Marcus ran it from an office in New Haven, close enough to Greenwich to oversee operations, but far enough that he could breathe. He helped veterans rebuild their lives, taught younger therapists the techniques he'd developed, created programs that combined physical rehabilitation with mental health support, understanding that healing the body meant nothing if the mind stayed broken. Zara got her violin lessons back. A new teacher, properly funded, with a beautiful instrument the scholarship program provided. She practiced every evening in their new apartment, still modest, but clean and safe, with enough bedrooms that Zara had her own space. Adrian called once a week. Progress reports. Questions about technique. Sometimes just to talk. He was learning to walk with leg braces and a cane. Still working with a physical therapist Marcus had trained personally. The cruelty hadn't vanished entirely, but it had been redirected. Now he fought bureaucracy and insurance companies with the same vicious precision he'd once used on assistants. He'd learned to be fair, if not warm. He'd learned to say thank you. He'd learned that respect built over a lifetime could crumble in moments, but could also be rebuilt slowly and painfully through changed behavior. On a Sunday morning in early fall, Marcus and Zara drove to the cemetery where Simone was buried. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the smell of cut grass and fallen leaves. They walked across the grounds together, Marcus carrying a blanket, Zara carrying her violin case. They sat beside the headstone. Marcus told Simone about the foundation, about the veterans they were helping, about the kids learning music because of her name on the scholarship. He told her he was sorry it took him so long to come back to the work, that he'd been lost for a while, but he'd found his way. "I'm ready now," he said quietly to the stone. "I'm back." Zara asked if she could play something. Marcus nodded. She opened her case and lifted out her violin. The instrument gleamed in the morning light. She positioned it under her chin, raised the bow, and began to play. The piece was one she'd been practicing for weeks. Not perfect. Her fingering slipped in a few places. Her vibrato wavered. But it was full of feeling, every note carrying the weight of everything she'd seen her father go through and come out the other side of. Marcus closed his eyes and listened. For the first time in 12 years, the weight pressing down on his chest felt a little lighter. Not gone. It would never be completely gone, but manageable. Bearable. Bearable. He thought about Adrian standing in that ballroom, about Zara asking why the mean man wouldn't try, about all the soldiers he'd helped over the years who taught him that healing wasn't just about fixing bodies, it was about giving people back their dignity, their hope, their reasons to keep fighting. The music swelled and faded. Zara lowered her bow. Marcus opened his eyes. "That was beautiful," he said. Zara smiled and leaned against his shoulder. They sat there together in the quiet morning, father and daughter, beside the grave of the woman who'd believed everyone deserved help, even when they didn't deserve it. And Marcus finally understood that staying choosing to help someone who didn't deserve it, enduring the pain and the cost and the daily humiliation, wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing he'd ever done. True strength isn't found in the power you wield over others. It's found in the courage to stay when everything tells you to leave, to endure when endurance seems impossible, to give dignity to someone who's given you nothing but cruelty, not because they deserve it, but because you choose to be better than their worst moments. In the end, endurance, not dominance, is the highest form of victory. Marcus stood up and offered his hand to Zara. She took it, and together they walked back across the grass toward the car, toward home, toward the life they were building together out of the pieces of what had been broken. The sun was warm on their faces. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. And for the first time in a very long time, Marcus was ready for it.